Okay, so sit yourself on your lift and then just come into a cross leg position. Just have a little wriggle about to make sure that you feel evenly placed. Maybe move the buttock flesh back and out to the side. And then hold onto your knees and lift your chest. Draw your front chest upwards. Draw your shoulders down away from your ears. Just look down at the floor. Look at something that's not moving and allow your eyes to become still in the sockets. So you may find at first the temptation to move your eyes is strong, but see if you can just keep your eyes still in the sockets. Soften the jaw, soften your tongue. Listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. And then bring your hands into Namaste. Press your palms firmly together, lengthen from the armpits into the elbows. Keeping your eyes still in the sockets to quieten the brain. And with an exhalation, allow your eyes to gently close. Listen to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Again, maintaining the stillness of your eyeballs. Keep them extra still when your eyes are closed. Allow the eyes to look down into the chest cavity. Observe the quietness of the brain as the eyes remain still. And then very gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone. And then release the backs of your hands down towards your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Just look directly forwards, hold on to your knees, look directly forwards, and again, try and keep your eyes still in the sockets. And notice that as you inhale, there's a feeling of kind of compulsion that the eyes want to rise up and look upwards. So just to be aware of that. But keep your eyes looking directly ahead. So it's a way to quieten the brain. You often see if someone feels nervous or ill at ease just from the movement of their eyes. So when someone feels nervous, their eyes kind of jump about, like they find it difficult to make eye contact. So learning to still the eyes when they want to move about is a great way to learn to calm the brain. Of course, there's always the feeling that you don't really stare at another person for like intensely for any length of time, but we can learn to kind of soften the eyes through learning to still the eyes. So just maintain that feeling of stillness and observe the brain. Observe the front brain, how the front brain becomes a little more under control. And then turn to the right side. Try to keep the eyes still in the sockets as you turn. Rotating the abdomen and the ribs and the shoulders, keeping your eyes as still in the sockets as you possibly can. And then come back to the center. Hold on to your knees. Take a deep inhalation, and then again, with stillness in the eye sockets, turn to the left. So if you are feeling anxious or nervous, a good way to quieten the anxiety and the nerves is to just keep your eyes still in the sockets. Just to look at something that's not moving. Like I say, preferably not another person. That's just will make them feel uncomfortable. But just something that isn't moving. Turn the chest. And then come back to the center. Come off your lift and then go down into Adho Mukha Virasana. But with that consciousness of maintaining the quietness of the eyes. So as you come forward, sitting back on your heels, aim to keep your eyes still in the sockets. Just breathing deeply from the bottom of the lungs to the top of the lungs. Feeling that you can keep the seat bones down on the heels, but at the same time you extend deeply into the arms. Keeping the eyes open at this stage, but looking at the floor. Press your palms of your hands deeply into the floor and notice that it becomes easier to turn the tailbone in. Come up onto your knees. Have your hands as wide apart as your mat. Turn your toes under and then come up into the wide dog down. So with the feet wide as the mat, the hands as wide as the mat. And just feel your way into the pose, but again, by maintaining the stillness of the eyes. Maintain the stillness of the eyes, but still observe the feeling of the pose. Try and aim for even sensations within the two legs, within the two arms, between the arms and the legs. So try and observe where you're working more deeply, on which leg you're working more deeply. And then get both legs to, get the other leg to kind of follow the more enthusiastic leg. You're working more in your legs or in your arms. Are you working evenly on the left and the right? So address those imbalances. Step your feet forwards, come up into a standing position. Get your blocks for half uttanasana, and then bring your feet as wide apart as your mat. Turning your toes in, and then standing in a wide tadasana with the toes turned inwards. So treat the pose as tadasana. Feel how the feet connect to the floor. Lift the shins out of the ankle socket. Lift the kneecaps up away from the shins. Lift the thigh muscles up into the hip socket. The thigh bones up into the hip socket. Lift the chest and then raise your arms. And then hinge at the hips, entirely at the hips. And then just find the blocks. So adjust your legs so that your legs, again, feel like they're working evenly. Pressing the kneecaps into the back of the knee. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards so that you can pick up the seat bones. Pointing the tailbone up towards the ceiling. Have fingertips on the blocks and project the chin and the chest forwards. Breathing evenly and deeply. So you might want to stay there if you're protecting your back, or if you can go down a little lower, then do. But again, working through the feeling of the pose observing how the feeling of the pose changes. But at the same time, keeping your eyes open and keeping your eyes looking just directly forwards, keeping the eyes still in the sockets. So that focusing on keeping your eyes still in the sockets is one action, but that action in itself allows the rest of the brain to focus on the physical body. So keeping the eyes still and then focus on the feelings of the pose, making the feelings even. If you can go down to the floor, then go down to the floor, but working with mindfulness as to your back. Breathe in evenly, like we're trying to bring evenness to the physical body. If you can go down all the way, then reach around the backs of your heels, drawing your body in through the legs. But again, sustaining the stillness of your eyes. Sustaining the length of the front chest, sustaining the observation of the evenness of the action, of especially the legs, but also the torso of the arms. Keeping your eyes as still in the sockets as they can go. Even when you move your head, just try to keep your eyes still. And then release your ankles if you've got them, and then come up into standing position just in Tadasana. Lift and open the chest, driving the spine upwards. Again, keeping your eyes still in the sockets. And just spend a little time just kind of almost swaying in an imaginary breeze. Just finding that when you bring your weight forwards when you bring your weight forwards, the weight goes into your toes. When you bring your weight back, you bring your legs back, your weight goes into your heels. When your legs come forwards, sway forwards, the weight goes into the toes. When the legs hit back, they sway back, it goes into your heels. It's better to try and get the weight in the heels, but without losing the connection of the toes. So sway the legs back, but keep the toes in connection with the floor. Lengthening from the heels. Bring your arms out nice and wide in towards your chest, and then step or jump the feet nice and wide, and then turn your left toes in and your right leg and foot all the way out. So this week we've been kind of really concentrating on this inner groin region. It's where the leg meets the torso. So it's within the pelvis, but it's the groin is the area where the leg meets the torso. So find a spot in that inner groin along that line that between the leg and the torso, and then turn that spot towards the little toe side of the foot. So really rotate the whole of the leg, but we're really trying to turn that inner groin around to the little toe side. And then from there, so from that diagonal, bring another diagonal from the outer heel of that foot into the big toe, so that you don't lose contact with that big toe, because when we turn this leg, we often lose contact with that big toe. So from the inner groin to the little toe, from the outer heel into the big toe, and then lengthening across from that inner groin. Lengthen from that inner groin into the outer shoulder, the left shoulder, and then come down, turning from that inner groin, from the inner groin to the little toe, from the inner groin to the left shoulder. So it's almost like you kind of bring the seatbelt on. Press the back leg deeply into the floor so that the legs feel even. You can either look down or forwards or up, but whichever you do, keep your eyes still in the sockets. Focus on turning that inner groin to the little toe, and then lengthening from the inner groin into the outer shoulder, into that left shoulder. Keep your eyes still in the sockets. And keep the breath deep. Keep your eyes still in the sockets and keep the breath consistent. And then reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, stretch the arms out, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in and the left leg and foot all the way out. Just release your hands for a second. So again, turning from that inner groin across to that little toe side. So one of the other actions that happens when we turn from the inner groin, not just from the leg, is that the back, is that the front leg buttock bone, this front leg buttock bone here, moves inwards, moves forward slightly. So then we have that hip moving forwards, and this hip has to move back to really open up the front of the pelvis. This leg hits back to the wall behind you. So turn from the inner groin to the little toe, from the outer heel into the big toe, from the inner groin all the way across to that right shoulder. And then come down, find the shin. Turning that inner groin in both directions so that it opens up. Keeping your eyes still in the sockets as much as you can. Listen to the breath. Feel that as you turn that inner groin, the front leg buttock bone pushes forwards. So the back leg has to counter that and hit towards the wall behind you. Keep your eyes still. Keep the breath quiet, but deep. Feel that you can grow into the pose from the inside. And then reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, bring your feet parallel, and then step or jump your feet back together. Just go back into Tadasana. Just reset the eyes. Reset your Tadasana from the feet up into the legs, up into the torso, into the arms, into the neck, into the head. Bring your feet hip width apart. Turn your toes in, raise your arms up. And then come forwards, padangusthasana. If you can't reach your toes, then you can use a belt. Wrapping the belt around your toes, holding onto the toes. Otherwise, hold onto the big toes. So the feet are hip width apart, the toes are turned in slightly, the heels are hitting out slightly. Activate those Tadasana legs, lifting the shins out of the ankle socket, lifting the kneecaps away from the shins, lifting the thigh bone up into the hip socket, lifting the seat bones, projecting the chin and the chest forwards, maintaining softness in the breath, stillness in the eyes. And if you can, bend your elbows out to the side and draw the body in towards the legs. Have a tug of war with your big toes, stamping them down, trying to rip them up out of the floor like a nail hammered into the floor. Keeping your eyes still and quiet. And then project the chest forwards. Bring the hands, release the toes, bring the hands away from the toes, just bring the hands underneath the shoulders and then stretch into half uttanasana. And then bring your hands into your hips, bend your knees on the way up if you need to. And then come up into Tadasana. So just breathing evenly, lifting out of the floor, defying gravity. Keeping your eyes still in the sockets. And then just gently release the body. Come down onto your knees, come down onto your front. Have your fingertips underneath your shoulders, your toes tucked under. And then come up into dog down, feet hip width apart, hands shoulder width apart. Come up into dog down. Keeping your eyes still in the sockets, observing the evenness of the stretch. From one leg to the other, from the legs to the arms, from the legs to the torso, from the torso to the legs, torso to the arms, arms to the torso, arms to the legs. Arms to the palms, palms to the fingers, fingers into the fingernails. From the bone into the muscle, into the flesh, into the skin. And then just very gently release down onto the toes, onto the knees, and then come up into sitting back on your heels in virasana. Just spend a moment or two sitting back on your heels, just listening to the breath, just looking forwards, looking at something that's not moving. come forwards into Adho Mukha Virasana. Maintaining the connection between the heels and the seat bones. Lengthening from the hips into the armpits, from the armpits into the elbows, elbows into the wrists, wrists into the palms, palms into the fingers, the hips into the knees into the shins, into the ankles, into the tops of the feet. So we often think about driving the seat bones down on the heels by kind of brute force, but actually we lengthen from the knee into the hip to drive the hips down, as well as lengthening from the armpits into the hips. Okay, release your hands and then come up into, just sit back in your heels again. Just breathe in evenly, deeply. Just bring the bolster from underneath your back. If you haven't got a bolster, just use some folded blankets and get a folded blanket for your head. And then we're going to come into Supta Baddha Konasana. So we can do a quiet Supta Baddha Konasana. It's good to use a belt for this. So get yourself a belt and then make it into a big loop, a self-locking loop. And then bring the legs into Baddha Konasana. So the soles of the feet are together. You bring the heels close to the hips. Put the belt into a big loop and then put the belt around the small of the back, and then the other end of the loop underneath the outside edge of the toes, and then have the tail of the belt so that you can pull it towards you to tighten it. So pull the belt tight. So this gives us lots of support and quietness in Supta Baddha Konasana. So pull it tight. You don't want it so tight. We're not trying to kind of stop circulation, but we're just trying to keep this kind of shape, this compactness. And then just lift and elevate the spine upwards as you drive yourself down onto the bolster, and then just bringing your head and the neck onto the blanket, and then just bring your arms out to the side. Now if this is strong in your lumbar, then maybe you come too close to the bolster, so just correct yourself, just shuffle away from the bolster just a couple of millimeters, a millimeter or two, and then come down. If that's still strong in your lumbar, you can sit on another folded blanket. Breathe evenly and deeply. Keep your eyes still in the sockets, but you can close your eyes at this stage. Observe the breath. Observe that as you inhale, the chest rises upwards and outwards. And as you exhale, the chest relaxes and lowers. The lower ribs relax. Observe that as you inhale in 3 dimensions into the chest cavity. So you breathe into your back chest as much as the front chest, as much as the armpit chest. Listen to the sound of the breath. Observing that the in-breath and the out-breath have different sounds to them. There's a tangible differentiation between the in-breath and the sound of the out-breath. Fill the lungs from the bottom of the lungs to the top of the lungs, and empty the lungs from the top to the bottom. Breathe evenly into both lungs and evenly out of both lungs, correcting it if you find that you're not naturally filling both lungs evenly, emptying both lungs evenly. Observe that the sound of the breath, the in-breath starts at the nostrils, the sound of the out-breath originates at the back of the throat. So in a moment, we're going to move into stage 2 of ujjayi pranayama, which is a normal inhalation and a slow, deep and steady exhalation until the lungs feel empty, followed by normal inhalations and long, slow, deep, steady exhalations until the lungs feel empty. So we focus on extended out breath. So whenever you're ready, just take some normal in breaths, normal out breaths. Take a normal in breath and then a slow, deep, steady exhalation until the lungs feel empty. Followed by normal inhalation and deep exhalation. Observe how the extended out breath affects the eyeballs. So try and maintain the stillness of the eyeballs. And then just bring the breath back to a normal rhythm, just observing the breath as in ujjayi stage 1. Just normal breathing, observing the rise and the fall of the chest, observing the sound of the breath. So again, using the stage 2 ujjayi pranayama, it brings quietness. The extended out breath brings quietness to the body and to the brain. When you're ready to disturb yourself, just push your elbows and then your hands into the floor and then lift yourself up. Just release the belt from around the legs a little and then draw the knees together and then use your bolster underneath your knees. If you've got some extra blocks handy, put them for underneath your feet and then have a blanket for underneath your neck and your head. So just make sure that you're in a good straight line. And then allow the body to just rest into the floor. So the bolster underneath the knees helps to soften the back. You can experiment with where you place the block to really support your lumbar. Move it up towards the back of the legs a little to soften the lumbar even more. Or just down underneath the back of the knees to lengthen the spine. Just draw your attention down into the soles of the feet. So that the skin of the feet becomes alive. Is there evenness and the alertness of the skin at the sole of the foot? And then consciously relax the sole of the foot. Draw your attention into the top of the foot, into the skin and the flesh and the muscle and the bone. And consciously relax the top of the foot. Relax the skin and the muscle and the bone and the bone marrow. Draw your observation into your shins. Allowing the calf, the shin bone to sink into the bed of the calf muscle. Softening the skin, relaxing the flesh and the muscle and the bone. Draw your attention to your thighs. And then relax the skin and the flesh and the muscle and the bone and the marrow of the bone. Allowing the fronts of the thighs to sink into the backs of the thighs. Draw your attention into your torso. So from the pelvis into the abdomen, into the rib cage. And soften the skin and the flesh and the muscle and the bone. Draw your attention into your arms and your hands and your fingers. And relaxing and softening the skin and the muscle and the flesh and the bone. So that the arms feel light yet heavy. Draw your attention into your neck. Softening the skin, the flesh, the muscle and the bone. Drawing your attention into your skull. Softening the skin around the whole of the skull. Softening the skin and the flesh and the muscle and the bone. Softening the brain. Feeling as though the body is basking in the lightness of energy. When you're ready, just gently begin to wriggle your toes wiggle your fingers, bring yourself back into this pose of sirvasana. And then bend your knees. Just rest your feet on the bolster. Have the feet apart, the knees together. And draw your knees in towards your chest. Have a little grounding massage, just drawing the body from side to side, just gently massaging the spine. Bringing your consciousness back into the physical body. And then very gently just roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten the top leg. Come back up into a seated position. Just a final spinal lift. Bring your hands into Namaste. Close your eyes. Draw your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning. Good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy. The extensions, the forward bends, the twists, the reclining poses. Pranayama bring to the body and to the mind. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then just very gently release the backs of your hands down towards your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel as though you have really given yourself some good positive energy, kind of just filled your body up like you filled a gas canister with good energy. So thank you very much for joining me.